Okay, I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. It's 7:03 by my computer. Roll call, we have Doc Fellner.
Here.
Myself, Gail Baldinger in attendance. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda if there's no changes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second. Dr. Felder makes the motion. Mr. Ivy seconds. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion to approve the agenda passes 3-0. The first discussion item is the CHIP partnership agreement, ordinance number 2020-27. Who wants that?
I'll just offer up real quickly. This is the agreement that we're being asked to sign to work collaboratively as we have in the past with the county and the city of Bucyrus on the CHIP housing program. So it's pretty much, I think you all have copies of it.
Yeah.
What it is what it says it is. And then the agreement itself follows 3 or 4 pages behind, but
This is pretty much an annual thing, isn't it, Tom?
yeah, the only thing that I would say that has changed, that is going to change, is that we're going to, county went to a different administrator at the county level rather than ORDC. They've contracted with Great Lakes Community Action Commission. So that's about the only thing as far as the program itself that will change, but we need to, I think, be authorized to sign the agreement.
Okay. Anybody else from the committee have any questions?
No, I read through it thoroughly and it makes complete sense. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion, if there are no other comments or questions, to move ordinance 2020-27 onto full council for consideration.
I'd just like to second.
Dr. Fellner makes a motion to move us on 2020-27 on to full council. Seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ordinance number 2020-27 moves to full council. Next, we have amending 2020 appropriations fund 201, ordinance number 2020-28. Who would like that one? Brian or the mayor?
Mayor, I'll start.
Go ahead,
and
Brian.
then you can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the initial plan, this is dealing with the not Portland, we're ahead. Harding Way paving project. And this would be paid for Fund 201. We're seeing some legislation at the next finance meeting regarding possible borrowing on that. But as the day went on today, the mayor had some suggestions that this is where I'll cue him to talk about that may not be the fund we end up with. If we don't borrow, we'll take it out of a different fund. Now, Thomas, I need your opinion if I can continue or not because of that.
Well,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I think you can have it continue with this, but you may have to come back to council to change the fund later.
Right. Okay, let me jump
Right.
in. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Brian.
If you want to go ahead, I'll mute myself. I was just saying I'm going to mute myself so there's no extra noise. It's all yours.
Okay. The thinking on this was to go ahead and borrow the $460,000 so we had sufficient funds to do the Harding Way project this year. In a way, it's interrelated to the next item on the agenda, but I'll try not to confuse the two issues. An alternative way to get this same project funded and ready to roll this year would be to take some amount of funds. I'm saying let's just say for the sake of making the point, $300,000 from the capital improvements fund and combining with already existing appropriations in 201, and those two, that combination of funds, fund the urban paving project this year with those two sets of resources. So what is proposed as 2020-28 wouldn't necessarily have to be, we could just defer that from the agenda if the committee thought it would be better to, if you will, pay cash than to use a short-term note to fund that project.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering what the Harding Way project was. The only thing I could think of was the paving project that the state's gonna be doing this year. My question is, the state had that, what, $7 million budget cut? Is that
Right.
gonna, yeah, I know the tax dollars, the gas tax dollars are gonna be affected because of this. They're not gonna draw as much money. But I don't know if there's gonna be an effect on what they're gonna do for paving this year.
Well, I did check on all of that, and this project is in their budget for the July 2nd sale, I believe it is, July 1st or July 2nd. So we'll need to get our portion of the money to Ashland one way or the other here by the end of May.
So that's still a go then, huh?
Yeah.
I was,
And
yeah,
and as best as I can tell, so is the project, which will sell in calendar year 21, but most likely be constructed in calendar year 22. That'd be the Portland Way project.
yeah.
But anyway, so there are two ways to fund this. And there's, we could spend time debating the philosophy of borrowing money now at relatively low interest rates versus using some of the resources we have in this year's budget and going ahead and building the project. So if the consensus is, now let's go ahead and use the money that's already in the budget, then we wouldn't have to do anything with item B. It just kind of, like I said a minute ago, be deferred from the agenda.
Okay. What else on the committee think?
I have a question, Tom, our portion still is 460,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems like a pretty small number.
Yeah, I think it's
relation to
1.6 million, Doc, the overall project. That's the estimate. So
What, I'm
it's,
sorry?
we
What-
have, and since you ask, I'll go ahead. We added some portions to it by adding the square. It seemed pretty foolish just to pay Portland Way and then have the apron, if you will, of the square be 15-year-old pavement. In fact, when you look at it, that's where some of the worst pavement deterioration is. So it would be that. It also, one thing I'd want to say about the service department, they've been working in advance of this project, and you may have noticed replacing some of the catch basins that had sunk, and that will save us, and we'll do it in advance, and we kept that out of the project. There's a little bit of ADA compliance, but that's how you get to the 460,000. Our share of paving, and then a couple of odds and ends, additional pavement in the in the square, and then some ADA stuff.
So just, my opinion is that if we have budgeted and we have the money in the budget, not to borrow. I know the interest rates are attractive, but we may need to save that for a project in the near future. Who knows what could happen? I think if we could pay for it, then I think we should. That's just an opinion.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. The money's already budgeted and ready to go. I think we should just use it.
And
Okay.
I also agree as well. My only question was just kind of getting caught up to date. I'm sure
Mhm.
this happened before I joined council. I was just kind of curious as to if the money was appropriated, what are the circumstances that have changed or not changed that have brought up the, just to consider the borrowing aspect of it. Is it because of the unknown economic situation that we could be having in the future, or is it a combination of that plus all great interest rates that we currently could have if we decided to borrow?
Right.
So
Well, my
that was-
answer to, yeah, excuse me, Aaron, I didn't mean to talk over. My answer real quickly to that is, leads to letter C on the agenda.
okay.
The decision to go with existing funding rather than borrowing the money really came about because of some restrictions on the capital improvements fund
Okay.
that the state auditor recommended that we follow. And so it was really responding to that we decided, hey, we might as well just go ahead and use capital improvements fund and do something positive with that. And not borrow any money for a paving project.
All right.
And if I can clarify just one, perhaps muddy the waters a little bit more on that. We initially had not appropriated the money knowing we were going to do so because we waited until we found out what our portion would be. So that's where the 460,000 came in. We knew it was going to be spent, but we didn't know from what part. We went to the borrowing route when we thought that was happening. But as the mayor said, there's been some changes and it may make more sense to do it. There is no gain to save the cash right now. Our whopping interest rates are not earning us that much. If we've got the cash, it does make some sense to just use it.
Well, I appreciate the
I'm not
guidance
sure
from the committee.
if anybody else has a question on that.
I got it. I think and the last thing I'd want to say on B, if I could, Mr. Chairman, is that we'll still have in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $270,000 of other paving. And that was the other consideration that Aaron was asking about. What was the thinking? Well, gee, we'd like to do more than $250,000 of sort of general miscellaneous paving, if you will. But it looks like just the way things are shaping up, that's probably the size of that I guess I'll call annual paving program. That, by the way, that paving program is funded exclusively with those $20 license plate fees. So we tried to make it a habit of ours to put those in the residential streets. So when somebody says, what does my $20 go for? You can point to the streets in town. They may actually use them or live on them, but that's really what we'll have will be limited to that and a little bit of money that's left in Fund 201.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't we get some other funding for other parts of the town that's only especially dedicated for certain areas too, that'll be coming in or not?
No, no. We used to do a lot of CDBG funds that we did a lot of paving with. That's gone a little bit by the wayside because of I guess have been acquired by the county, and the county administers the block grant program for us. Not to be a total wise Alec, but you know how I am. This cycle, this 2-year period, Crawford County got 2 sets of sidewalks in Bucyrus and a set of sidewalks over in Crestline. So if you ever wondered whether the CDBG program was doing a lot of good, the way it's iterated now in Ohio, I'd argue it's really not a whole lot of good. I will acknowledge that we used those same dollars a couple years ago to tear down the old Neff Brothers. But my point is that there's not a lot of dollars there for that.
Yeah, it was just a question I had.
Yeah. So anyways, that's B. And I think what I'm hearing is that that doesn't need to even go to the agenda. We'll just keep it right where it is in committee.
Yeah, I think you'll
Is
be
there,
100,000 you brought up, and then put that with other 160 you have in the fund. Is that how you'll do
Right.
that?
That's how we'll do it.
Does the $300,000 need appropriated so a check can be cut?
No, if you look under 401, that 325 was appropriated.
Okay.
Actually, 350 was appropriated. So we're
Okay, I didn't have it in front of me. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good. Okay.
So do we
Okay.
need a motion to move this ordinance on to full council for consideration?
No, we're not
No.
gonna put
We
ordinance
don't
on
want it to.
Okay,
as the budget.
thank you.
Right.
But thanks for the direction. I wasn't crazy about, borrowing more money. We've got a couple more big projects in the highway world, so.
We got, yeah, we do have, and we have, also this crisis we gotta get through. So if we get into a bind, we're gonna our borrowing.
Right. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to C. It's the loan fund COVID-19 discussion.
Okay, thank you, Gail. I'll continue here. That changed at the same time with what we had been working on at City Hall for, gosh, over a week, was a way to come up with an available and usable source of funds within the city government to provide startup money or restart money rather for existing businesses within the city of Galion. Not necessarily businesses that didn't get PPP, but certainly businesses that didn't qualify for payroll protection plan or program, whatever that PPP stands for. And so we've been working on it. Initially, the proposed source of funds was seemed like the capital improvements fund, that same 300,000 that we spent a few minutes talking about. When the state auditor advised us that that was probably not an allowable use, that providing assistance to a business didn't meet, at least in her definition, the definition of a capital improvement. So no need to fight just to win the point. So I feel like we've switched gears. The goal overall is to provide funding in the very near term for businesses that may need a loan, may need some help getting restarted. And so that's the purpose of the loan fund. What seems to be, if council is, I don't want to be a homer, is enthusiastic about the need to provide local assistance for businesses so that they can get up and get going, then where we're going to find the funds is not, I don't think anybody should be too concerned about that. And I'll detail that. Let me just spend 1 second, if I might, Gail, talking about the way I look at it. These funds could be used for a handful of things, from paying back rent, paying utilities, cash that they might need to buy supplies to get going. I would really like to see these dollars be not burdened with a lot of requirements, and that the money be available on very generous terms, and try to get it out when the businesses are going to need money. They're going to need money to get started. And in that respect, they may need money. A restaurant, for instance, may need to do some things to make it COVID friendly for that May 21st indoor startup. Now, I don't know that as a specific example, but it would seem that being able to create that social distancing with an investment within the facility is something that could be helpful. Maybe the bakery needs some things to protect customers from bakers. So in any event, the idea is to get that money, get it in a position of being able to be put into the community as soon as possible. So I'm going to touch on two more things, and then certainly want to answer any questions. This is where the law director and his consultation, his inputs come into trying to formulate this. Although it appears the city could have a direct loan program, I think Thomas's advice, and I agree, would be that we would be better off if we had a entity such as the Port Authority that would really be responsible for administering the loan program. So if one of the questions you have, well, that I kind of like the idea who's going to run it. The answer is I would propose that we take these funds. I'll talk about what funds I'm referring to here in just a second, and we would move those funds, transfer those funds to the Port Authority and have them distribute the loans on a real rule-friendly, very, business-friendly fashion. In other words, I don't believe we're going to have much success doing this if we collateralize the loan, if they have high fees, if their interest rates aren't near zero, and we really don't make them available to help businesses get going. So without roping Thomas into necessarily making a comment, the decision and the proposal would be to have these dollars headed over or transferred over to the Port Authority. And they would be responsible for administering. We get into the detail of that. I don't want to get into too much of that because what I'm proposing, I don't want to take to the Port Authority to ask if they'd like to do this on the city's behalf if council isn't supportive of doing it. So I've got a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, but because the port is meeting tomorrow morning, I thought it's one of the reasons I felt it was important to meet tonight is to get some feedback about this particular loan program. So where would the money come from? I'm proposing that it initially comes from two sources, both within the 101 fund, within the general fund. Gosh, I want to say about 6 weeks ago, we put a freeze on the depot funds. So for those sub-account types, it's 101-40-20, and that's where the depot money is at. There's about $110,000 or $12,000 that has been basically frozen by us in the office. And I'm proposing that we make those dollars available to be transferred to the port. And then the other portion of funds I'm recommending be transferred is somewhere in the neighborhood of 80,000, misspoke, that is in the contract services part of the mayor's budget. So what I'm saying tonight is that we transfer approximately $200,000 into that fund to get some local assistance going for businesses that have really been without cash flow and without a lot of resources for now nearly 6 weeks. Let's see, what else do I want to say about that? I want to say that I fully expect this money to be offset by the COVID money that the local governments are, I don't like this word a lot, but it's true, entitled to out of the CARES Act. So without digressing too far, I'd encourage everybody to read all they can about Senate Bill 30, passed the Senate. I'm perplexed, and in my live stream later, I'm going to, I guess, opine about how we need the General Assembly to, if they will, give local governments their CARES money. There's $1.2 billion that the Fed sent to local governments in Ohio that the General Assembly won't send forward. There is $350 million that they have approved for local use in the Senate. For some reason I don't want to get into because I'll probably get in trouble, the House has not acted on that. So when we get that money, which according to the county auditor will be in the neighborhood of $175,000, I'm proposing that that $100,000 can either go back to the depot fund or could be used for additional lending if this small business program is successful in the sense that there's a lot of businesses that are interested in it. So that's the loan program. That also gets into where are you going to come up with the money for the contract tracers? But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So what I would propose is to use existing budget again, take it from the general fund, the depot that we've pretty much frozen any projects for this year until things turn around, and some other money within the mayor's budget, and put that in a position that the Port Authority can lend that out for small business loans. So that's the core of the idea. I'll stop there.
Okay, this COVID loan fund, they will be, if they borrow that money, will they be required to pay that back?
Yeah, I think I don't want to be too prescriptive, Gail, and telling the port how they should set up the loan program, but I don't think that anything above $5,000, I'd like to hear why more than $5,000 per business would be necessary. So we might recommend a $5,000 limit. I'm actually would recommend, but they'll do perhaps kind of what they want. A 12-month same as cash. So a full year deferral on whatever amount they borrow up to 5,000. And then at the end of a year, if it's not been paid back, then I'd expect the port then to amortize that into a more conventional loan.
Okay.
But I don't really think it makes sense, nor is it necessary for it to be a straight, a grant program, a quote unquote giveaway program.
I kind of like the idea. If anybody out there needs the help, it would be great. But I would like to make sure that some kind of a repayment would come back to the city. And I agree, 12 months interest free, same as cash should be, it'd be basically interest free. I really wouldn't want to turn it into a money making project, but I would like to see them to be required to repay back what they borrowed at least. So anything else?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Aaron.
Budgeting about $200,000, so we're at $5,000 a piece. So, we're
We could
looking
do
at
40 deals.
I was going to say about 40 businesses across town. So that does not sound unreasonable at all to me, especially as Gail said, if we know we're going to recoup within a year, and we got the extra insurance on top of that from the money coming from the state when they release it. It sounds like a noble idea.
Yeah, I think I don't know y'all, and Doc, you probably have a comment, so I'll just wait before I offer up anymore.
Well, I do. Thanks. First of all, as a small business person, about 15 years ago, I was the recipient of a loan from the city and was required to pay it back. And, it helped out a lot. In this particular crisis, I was fortunate enough to be a recipient of the PPP. And I think that it is a very difficult time to start your business back up, but with a little capital and, it's really an excellent idea. I know that there would be multiple businesses that would really benefit from that, especially since with the taking, for example, indoor dining, just as an example of, 2 restaurants in the uptown area, their space is already at a premium. I'm talking about Whistle Stop and Bistro. When they start enforcing the social distancing for indoor dining, that's really going to cut into their, profits to begin with. So I think it's really a good idea. I also believe that having a couple of bankers on the Port Authority, will give us a heads up on how to write a loan, how to stipulate some requirements. Again, you don't want to make it cumbersome or such a frustrating experience that it's better off not doing it than doing it, because I've had that experience as well. And I think that the payback, I think that's more of a value than just money that's received. And yeah, go ahead. Here's money for your troubles. Go spend it how you want. Let's make sure that it's spent on the business, whether it be overhead, rent, supplies, whatever, and with a reasonable payback. I think that's good faith and on everybody's part. So I think that's a fabulous idea.
Cool. What I was going to offer up is that if the first 40 businesses, I mean, there's a run on the bank, so to speak, then as the additional CARES dollars flow from Columbus finally, and actually go through Bucyrus on its way to Galleon, when that happens, and there's another 15, 20 businesses, we could always channel that, what would be new money, into the loan program. And if not, then what I'd hope to do is probably restore the money to the depot project. But let's maybe not get ahead of ourselves on that. We're fortunate enough. That sounds like a jock at a post-game interview, but we do have some resources. And it seems for us to sit on that money that was not going to be spent at the depot or not going to be spent within the mayor's office on engineering and other things because our projects are dialed back, if you will. It just seemed to me to be the right thing to get that spending authority in a place. And, we'll know in a year or so, but if we can avoid the Uptown and the other commercial businesses from sort of shutting down like they are now and not opening up, that I think it would be money well spent. I think all of us who drive on Hardingway, a little bit or a lot, it's a spooky feeling to drive from City Hall, almost to the square, and there's not a car in sight. So anything we can do to get that back up and running. The last comment, which maybe Gail is a segue into D, is that I'd like to put Andrea Barnes and Trish Factor, the people at the health department who will be probably involved in some conversations with merchants about what they need to do to actually meet the guidelines. And let's say, just for the sake of argument, that a restaurant needs to put up some barriers. It might be a requirement, but where are they going to come up with the $1,500 for, 4 or 5 pieces of fitted plexiglass? So that kind of things. Maybe I'm way off on the estimate, but it would be nice to have Andrea Barnes, our environmental health specialist, to be able to have a source of money to be able to talk to that retail business, restaurant or whatever that they're going to be dealing with over the next couple of weeks. So it's nice if there is a source of funds that they can guide these businesses to.
Okay, yeah, D is hiring contract tracers. Is that the tracing program that the state is trying to put up to try to trace this virus to help control the spread? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, and I guess Gail, yes, it is. And the thinking is twofold. It seems to me that we don't in the Galleon Health District want to have any bottleneck from the time an individual is tested positive for the coronavirus and the contact tracing of their associates begins. And from what I understand, Galleon's been able to do a pretty good job of staying current But I'm of the belief that we're better off to have the resources there, that if we were to have a spike or just the gradual growth of this, I don't want to have a bottleneck or a backlog of in the process at that contract tracing. So I had two ideas on this, and then I'll give up the floor. One would be if there is an urgent need to appropriate some unappropriated funds, okay? If the need is less urgent, what I would like to do is to see those CARES Act funds that the city will get from the state through the county. I would like to see us commit to and prepare to get those dollars channeled towards the contact tracers. One of the reasons the General Assembly is, if you will, holding up the majority of that 1.2 billion is that they're trying to get a waiver from the feds to allow local governments to use these dollars on supporting general operations rather than going to direct a COVID aid. So that's why, maybe that's why the snag. But what I'm proposing is that we take our COVID dollars, we put a large portion, let's say a third, into contact tracing. And if we need then money to support businesses, which is one of the approved uses in the Senate passed bill, that we would then be able to take some of those dollars and supplement this lending program that we were just talking about. So that's the idea, to get money there for contact tracers and not be dependent on the state sending people up or entirely dependent on the state's resources, their army of bug detectives. So I'd like to get our own, I'd like to have the health department be in a position to have their own COVID detective.
Just Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm just get a little procedural here on this. I think we need to wrap up anything that might be needed, and I'm going to look for Mr. Palmer to give me guidance on this, on the loan program first. If there is agreement that it should go to the Port Authority and it should go forward, I'd like to get that done so Mr. Palmer and I can get the proper legislation for tomorrow. Thomas, do you have a comment there?
I don't
Before we
disagree
go
with that,
on with the
Brian.
rest of the agenda.
I don't have no, I agree with you completely. Even at this point, I'm not entirely certain what that legislation will look like, but that's something that we can discuss after the meeting and as we go on. But yeah, you will have to wrap that. I understand that C and D on the agenda are intertwined, if you will, and they're both on there as discussion points. And I think you can actually merge those and talk about at the same time, Brian. But
all right.
Nonetheless, you are going to want to resolve C. You're absolutely right. You're going to want to resolve the issue of whether or not you want to move forward with the loan program.
Yeah,
And
Brian, thank you for that. Let me say that I know what the form it should take, so it could make it easy, and I'll verbalize it, and then it can, I think, be put into an ordinance for tomorrow. It would be the transfer from the mayor's contract services, 75,000 from that. And there may have to be some deobligation of some encumbrances there. But the other transfer would be from the 2040, the 101-2040, which is for the depot. So it'd be transferring that appropriation authority to the Port Authority. And then if they agree to accept that, meaning after that they would like to administer that program, then on Tuesday night, that's what the ordinance could do. Transfer the money to the port for the purposes of instituting a loan program.
The only thing in addition to that, Mr. Mayor, might be some sort of at least basic agreement with the Port Authority so that we can make sure that the expectations in terms of things like the money that comes back is given
Right.
back to the city. Just so some of these things are in, there's some clarity to that going into this process.
I would say that I would agree with you, and I would say that in the ordinance that that council would approve it with the condition that there is a contract executed between the port and the city of.
Okay,
And in that contract, I don't want to have the ordinance and moving the money, getting it ready, get in the way of negotiating a relatively short one-page contract.
oh, I don't either, and
Yeah.
I think it should reference the contract though. It
I agree
shouldn't-
with you.
Nikki the authority to sign it on behalf of the city.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, if the committee would vote out the ordinance, or if you follow, we're going to transfer from 2 accounts into the Port Authority account. And we'll probably then also have to expand their appropriation.
Yep, yep. I think the committee can express their opinion tonight. It's still going to have to be voted on the agenda tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, I know we had to bleed over during these 2 discussion items, and just what Palmer said was my intent. I wanted to get back to see.
It was
and
my
wrap-
fault, Gail, for sure.
But yeah, we definitely wanted those loans, those payback on those loans. We want them to go back into funds of where we pulled that money from originally, so we can hopefully down the road go on with some of those projects at some point in the future. And the other thing is, we're not really for certain when we're going to see those federal dollars for like COVID dollars.
Yeah.
We're not for certain when we're going to see them, or even if we ever will see them. So that's money I don't think we want to spend till we actually see it.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I'm a little more confident in that because it did pass the Senate,
Yeah,
but
you know. So, but
Okay.
the other 2 committee members.
I think we should proceed or ask Mr. Palmer to present some legislation for tomorrow's meeting and further discussion with the full council.
Yeah, we can vote that on to full council tomorrow, and then full council can get involved in the discussion at that point.
Yep, and well, I'll get it ready.
Yeah,
I'm
I
all
agree.
in favor for sure.
Okay,
So anyways, I'm sorry about doing that with the health department, but I think we've got to get the resources and the ability of the health department to get a contract tracer. The little conversation I had would be with Trish would be to go with a contract versus an employee. But really beyond that, I don't want to, we don't want to tell them who to hire, how to hire them, what rate, but we definitely, seems to me, and over the next year or the foreseeable future, we're going to have to supplement that so that there is a contact tracer. As I understand it, and this is the last thing I'll say, Gail. I understand that we've been using our director of nursing and the contract STD staff to do this contact tracing. And although I think they've done a good job, we've got to have our own resource so long as we're identifying new cases.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. The only thing I would ask the health department is to live within the budget that the city sets for them, instead of coming back and saying, we ran over and we need more.
Yeah.
I would ask, I don't think it's our place to, like you said, to tell them who they're going to hire, how much they're going to pay, as long as they live within the budget we set forth.
Right.
So, anything else from the other 2 committee members?
No, sir.
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Okay, did you
sounds like-
did you want to do a supplemental, or do you want to wait until that COVID money comes from the state? That'd be the only other question.
Let's it's a good question.
How,
What
Tom, how much? I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Tom, what do you think the amount would be?
I was
Yeah.
gonna put 50,000 up. I'm not sure if Trish would think that would be adequate for a 7-month period, and then that would give the flexibility to hire somebody for X number of hours to track cases until, the caseload either burn up the contract or it was it was unutilized. That's kind of how I'd envision it. Start
And-
with 50 and
And
hopefully
that,
that did the job.
the source of that supplemental would be what?
The unappropriated, rather significant fund balance.
Okay.
I don't want to brag about it because I'll knock on wood, you never know, but
Right.
we're really blessed right now. It's not on the agenda, but we've had a pretty good last 6 weeks revenue wise. And we started into this unknown with a pretty decent fund balance. So I would have no hesitation, I think, in overall priorities, taking some of the unappropriated general fund balance and getting the money out in the field, getting it to Trish and the board so that they can get moving.
I agree. A $50,000 seed money, if you want to call it that,
Right.
I think is appropriate. And if we need legislation, then I would want to proceed with that as quickly as possible.
We probably do, I think, Doc, but
I mean, if it was several hundred thousands of dollars, I would say wait for the CARES money, but 50,000 I think is even if more is required for the future, you don't want to get behind it. You need to do this right away.
right. I don't know if Trish is still on there or not. She fell off, but
She's
No,
on-
I'm on. I know I don't want to like step on toes or say anything unless there's questions. I mean, feel free to ask me questions. I am here.
You think it's a good idea right now? I mean, get this thing going?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We've got people working 7 days a week on this.
Okay.
And with a relatively, I will say, light caseload, if you look at this kind of as a whole, but for a jurisdiction our size and a staff our size, it's actually pretty hefty.
Sure.
So we've been doing that, and there's a few of us that are kind of burning the candle from both ends doing this. So yeah, being able to have whether that be extra hours from a part-time person or a contract individual, whatever that may be. And obviously with this discussion tonight, this is something our board actually meets tomorrow. So we'll be discussing it with our Board of Health and let them take a look at how they wish to proceed based on the needs that we have.
if
What
I
time
may
is
say
it
one more
tomorrow?
thing, I might say one more thing, and I think the other item is real quick. The Clark Kellogg in the anybody who's a basketball fan who misses that the term spurtability, which like what the heck does that mean? I think that applies here because I think their caseload will kind of spurt. There may not be a lot of activity, and then within our small health district, there'll be a couple, 3.
Mhm.
And I don't think you can track those down fast enough. So if we have the dollars there to respond to that spurt, I think that would be a good attribute of the health department if they could be, respond to that spurty nature of these cases.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to have to remember that one, Tom. But that is exactly how this has happened when we've had, maybe a handful of cases in one day, and then we have everybody that they came in contact with for 14 days to try to track all of those people down and doing all that. But it's also for us, it's the day to day. We have to monitor signs and symptoms twice a day, every day for every single one of these contacts. So it's a lot of contact tracing as well as monitoring of all of these contacts until their quarantine period is up. But yes, it does ebb and flow. A big spike in our time spent doing this, and then it settles out. It's still there, but it's kind of settling out, and then you'll see another spike. Yeah.
So
All right.
if there's support for putting it on the agenda, we do have the resource. I think Brian would agree with that.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think we can, go ahead with that.
I agree.
Me too.
We absolutely appreciate your support in every way, shape, and form here, guys.
Absolutely.
Okay, that should wrap up C and D. Let's move on to E, amending 2020 appropriations, the Kobe Foundation.
Yes, and I'm going to ask, this is the final time I'm going to say we're not quite sure how to do this. Let me back this up. We got $5,000 from the Kobe Foundation. We know we want to spend it, or we're spending it, I believe, Nikki and Tom, on the roof of the cabin. The appropriations aren't quite where they need to be, and I was looking for a better answer on how I want to do that transfer. I will have legislation for tomorrow, if you will allow me to put that on the agenda or vote it on tomorrow. It's not new money, it's just making sure it's in the right spot.
Yeah, the money donated from the
Can
Kobe
anybody
Foundation.
hear me?
Yes. Yes, and yes, Gail,
Yes.
it is. Money donated from the Kobe Foundation.
Way I took it when I read through that, it was donated money. I just wasn't sure if he was gonna put it in the roof, which that was my preference, to put it in the roof of that cabin at High C, or if you were going to help fund that project at East Park for another cabin there. So, but I'd rather see that roof at High C Park get repaired.
It's already
It's pretty
done.
cool. You ought to swing by. It does have kind of a sway back, like an old horse or an old mule, but it really looks nice. And there were some citizens were saying that the color should be match the rest of it. That humored the Stricklers, who thought they went. It's brand new cedar shake, and it looks real cool. It is a different color, and in a few years it'll weather, but looks
Yeah,
very nice. And we got a local family to do it. I'm real happy how it turned out. Nikki did a good job putting it together.
I hadn't realized that the project's completed already. I knew it was, last time I seen it, it was still, yeah, that sway's still there. I think that's in the old log structure. I don't think
I think it is. Yeah.
they can take that out. And as
Well,
long
now
as-
that you're, what did they call it? You're not, can't even remember. Sheltering at home. You can go take your bride out and drive by the new cabin. That's
Yeah.
that's excitement for us in the big city.
project's done, so we use those dollars to pay that bill then.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
Good.
How about somebody else?
Me too.
I like it. I drove by there the other day. That roof is as bright as can be. And like the mayor said, in 2 to 3 years, it'll look as worn as the rest of the cabin. So
Well, yes, it's got to weather down, yes, which was to be expected.
all right, are we all set?
With that being said, yeah, unless there's anything else that you want to bring up about this Kobe Foundation, we'll move for adjournment.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Mr. Ivy made the motion to adjourn. Dr. Fellner seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned at 7:57 by my computer.
Thanks,
See you.
thanks everyone.
All right. Thank
Uh,
you.
Bye.
Bye.
What did, what did Mark want?
What have you done? to
All
help
right,
the
Julie, all set?
citizens? What have you done to help the citizens?